What's going on, everybody? In this video I'm going to show you the most accurate way to diagnose a failed head gasket issue. So this method is going to use a gas analyzer. So if you are in an area where you have emissions testing, you probably have one of these in your shop. If you're not, you may still have one in the shop, or you may not. Any gas analyzer will work. In this case I'm using the Snap-on flexible gas analyzer that goes through a computer, but you don't necessarily need that. You just need one that specifically shows you the hydrocarbons, as that's the only really number on the screen here that we care about is the hydrocarbons, which is the HC ppm in the top left hand corner. So as long as your gas analyzer shows hydrocarbons, which all of them should, you'll be able to use this method quite easily. Before you begin, make sure that you do just like I'm doing on the screen now, and that's zeroing your gas bench. Your gas bench will likely do this right when you first boot it up. Mine did, but I took this recording after it had been sitting there for a little while, so I had to recalibrate it or re-zero it. If you don't do that, your numbers are going to be all over the place, so make sure you do that before you begin. After the zeroing is done, you're going to be looking for hydrocarbons in the cooling system. So you're going to want the radiator cap, or if you have a pressurized coolant expansion tank, you're going to want to take the cap off of that so you can check for hydrocarbons inside that cooling system. Now the easiest way to do this is going to be with a plastic bag wrapped around your radiator cap or your expansion bottle cap. You can do this with just the plastic bag and a rubber band right around the radiator cap itself, or I like to do it whenever I can with one of these spill-free funnels for filling cooling systems. That makes it a little bit easier. You're going to take the bag and let it sit over there, and you're going to let the car run up to temperature as best as you can without filling the bag up with coolant. And the bag will actually capture a lot of the hydrocarbons, and then you're going to stick the probe of your gas analyzer into that bag, and it's going to read the hydrocarbons that are in the bag. Now when you do this, make sure that you're not sticking the probe into the coolant if there's any coolant stuck in it or anything like that, as getting coolant into that probe will wreck the sensor in your gas analyzer. So just make sure to try to keep the probe as dry as possible. Now if you didn't see, what I did here was I actually cut a small hole in the bag and then poked the sensor through that hole, and then you just leave it sit there, and when you go back to your gas analyzer you watch the hydrocarbons and you'll see the number slowly climb up or rapidly climb up if you have a very large leak. Now generally you want those hydrocarbons to be reading 0 or at least very close to 0. I see plenty of vehicles where I've checked this and they stay right below 10 or right around 10, maybe a little bit lower. If it's perfectly sealed, they'll stay around 5. You can see now that this is a very, very bad head gasket leak. I knew it was leaking before I ever did this test, and it's up into the thousands. I typically will say it has a small leak if it's up into the 30s to 50 range, and it's a little bit larger leak where you'll start to see a lot of coolant usage issues if it gets up above 100. When it's up in the thousands like this, you actually get a lot of overheating issues and poor running conditions and things like that. This car had all sorts of issues going on with it, which is why it gets so high. You can see my numbers spiked earlier over 3,000 hydrocarbons in parts per million, and now they're balancing back out, and then they're going to slowly drop back off. I have not pulled the probe out when it was balanced out to about 1,400, but I'm about to pull the probe out, and when I pull the probe out it drops off rapidly. Now once I got the cylinder head off, you can see it had a ton of problems. There's a ton of pitting in this. The coolant ports around the cylinders are actually plugged solid full of crap. It looks like they dumped a bunch of sealer in this or something, and it's just plugged solid. You can actually see a lot of stuff I've already chiseled out laying on top of one of the cylinders there. The coolant ports in the block itself were actually starting to plug up as well. You can see some of the pitting and things like that I found having all kinds of issues in this cylinder head. Now this thing was also severely overheated. Obviously it is running this cylinder head is going to be running very hot when no coolant can be flowing through it, but the whole system itself was also overheating. The pitting is severely bad in this case. We sent this cylinder head out to a machine shop to be checked. You can see it here after I cleaned it up a little bit, and it turns out this cylinder head is completely junk. They're not able to machine it to clean all that up, which we kind of expected. So this customer is going to need a new cylinder head, and then hopefully that will fix all of their issues. Now in this case I'm showing you a very severe cylinder head failure here, but I've had plenty of issues where you maybe just have a little bit of coolant that's being used up every once in a while or something like that, or a very minor intermittent overheating issue that you think might be a head gasket, and this method finds it every single time. I've never had this method steer me wrong, and it's also a good way to just be able to look at it and say, yep, I can be confident that the head gasket is not a problem. If you see numbers, the hydrocarbons getting over into the hundreds, that could definitely cause an issue. Anything under maybe 100 or under 50 especially probably isn't causing any sort of issue, except for maybe a tiny bit of coolant usage here and there. So I would kind of avoid doing head gaskets for anything under maybe 100 or under 50 or something like that. It's probably not what I would recommend to a customer, but anything over into the hundreds or even especially into the thousands like this one was, you definitely have a head gasket issue, and it will cause drivability issues, and this will find it and prove it every single time. So I hope this video helps you out. I know it's a pretty quick one, and it doesn't have a lot of footage to it. I recorded this very quickly while I was working in between a lot of other stuff. I hope it helps you out though. This is a very good method. I use it a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond and answer your questions. Other than that, that's about it. That's all I have here. Thank you guys for watching.